In the news tonight, 2 Jordanian citizens are killed and 5 injured in the New Year terrorist attack in Istanbul. Jordan condemns the shooting in Istanbul that killed 39 people and expresses solidarity with Turkey in fighting terrorism. And 7 Iraqi policemen are killed in an attack claimed by Daesh terror group in the southern city of Najaf. Good evening and welcome to the news at 10. His Royal Highness Prince Faisal bin al-Hussein, the regent, welcomed visiting French Defense Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian. They talked about prospects to bolster defense and military ties between the two countries. Prince Faisal said Jordan has a keen interest in cementing its ties with France in various fields. They also discussed efforts to address various crises in the Middle East and ways to find political solutions to them and enhance regional security and stability. Further, regional and international efforts to combat terrorism and extremism were also reviewed. 2 Jordanian citizens were among those killed in a New Year terrorist attack in Istanbul that left at least 39 people dead. The Ministry of Foreign and Expatriate Affairs also said 5 other Jordanians were wounded in last night's shooting. The ministry spokesperson said Jordanian diplomats were at the hospital where the wounded Jordanians were admitted. She said the injured were in good to critical condition. The spokeswoman said the ministry was still following up with the Turkish authorities on the whereabouts of Jordanians who are still missing in Turkey. Jordan condemned the terrorist attack on New Year revelers in Istanbul that left scores of civilians dead or injured. Minister of State for Media Affairs and Communications and Government spokesman Mohammed al-Momeni expressed the Jordanian government's condolences to the Turkish people and government. He reiterated Jordan's rejection of all forms of terrorism. The kingdom, he said, stands firmly with Turkey in its fight against terrorism, adding that the war on terrorism requires more international cooperation. A massive hunt is underway in Istanbul for a gunman who went on a shooting rampage at an Istanbul nightclub, killing 39. The shooter opened fire at a random on revelers at the packed nightclub on the shoots of Istanbul's Bosphorus waterway just over 1 hour into the new year and fled the scene. Many foreigners were among the victims, including nationals of Saudi Arabia, Morocco, Lebanon and Libya. The shooting occurred as security was tightened across Europe for New Year celebrations. Here's more.
A manhunt underway in Turkey. Police seeking the attacker who shot dead at least 39 people in an Istanbul nightclub in the early hours of Sunday morning. Officials say around 15 or 16 of the dead were foreigners, with many bodies still to be identified. A police officer and nightclub workers also among the dead. Some early reports claimed multiple gunmen were involved, one possibly disguised as Santa Claus. On Sunday morning, Turkey's Interior Minister said that wasn't right.
According to the information we received from the police, there was one gunman. There weren't multiple gunmen. He was wearing a coat and trousers. He went inside as he opened fire, and we were informed that he was wearing different clothes inside, and he tried to get out. Our police forces continue to assess this information.
The wounded being treated Sunday morning at Istanbul hospitals, several in critical condition. Local media say up to 600 people were inside the Reyna club at the time of the attack. Some jumped into the Bosphorus to escape and were rescued by police. The killings come after a terrible 12 months for Turkey. 2016 saw a failed coup attempt and a string of terror attacks. The new year is off to an equally grim start.
Daesh terrorists attacked a police checkpoint near the southern Iraqi city of Najaf, killing 7 policemen and wounding 17 others, including civilians. Police said the assailants were traveling through the desert in 2 vehicles around Al-Qadisiyya town west of Najaf. When police stopped the first vehicle for inspection, the driver detonated an explosive load. The second vehicle fled and was stopped by police, who killed the 2 militants inside. Daesh issued a statement claiming responsibility for the attack. It said 4 gunmen had opened fire before detonating explosive vests, and then a 5th assailant launched a suicide car bomb. Further north, Iraqi forces said they recaptured the Intisar district of eastern Mosul from Daesh terrorists. Several people were killed and dozens were injured after Daesh mortars fell in a residential area of Mosul. The number of victims of the attack could not be immediately confirmed. Some of those injured were rushed to a hospital in Erbil, more than an hour away from the site of the attack. Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi said Daesh would be driven out of the country by April. The second phase of the campaign against Daesh was launched last Thursday, following weeks of deadlock, and has pushed the militants out of several more areas despite fierce resistance. The 4th day of the renewed push saw incremental advances on the eastern and southeastern fronts. A federal police official said Iraqi forces had taken near total control of 2 neighborhoods and were clearing a 3rd.
On the 4th day, our troops were able to liberate Al-Intisar neighborhood as well as Al-Sahha neighborhood. They are now clearing the Salam neighborhood. They are clashing with the enemy. Large numbers of our enemy were killed yesterday, and God willing, the defeat broke their back. Today, we will continue our advance.
Syrian government warplanes carried out several airstrikes and low-level clashes persistent in some areas. However, a Russian and Turkish-backed ceasefire largely held in other areas on its 3rd day. The British-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said jets bombed the villages of Kafr Kar, Mintar and around the town of Banan in the southern Aleppo countryside. Government forces also advanced overnight against rebels in the eastern Ghouta area near Damascus, seizing 10 farms close to the town of Douma. But other areas were quiet and opposition groups did not follow through on threats made yesterday to abandon the truce altogether, raising hopes for an end to the almost 6 years of fighting. Despite a rainy start to 2017 in London, thousands of people hit the streets to watch the British capital's annual New Year's Day parade. Dancers, acrobats, vintage cars and cheerleaders, along with the city's Lord Mayor, flooded the streets for the event. A giant inflatable caricature of the Lord Mayor of London was also carried down the streets. The event started at Green Park Underground Station near Buckingham Palace and ended at Parliament Square. In the United States, hundreds of thousands of merrymakers witnessed the descent of the New Year's Eve ball in Times Square at midnight. They were celebrating a century-old New York tradition under umbrella of security. As many as 2 million people, surrounded by a ring of 40-ton sand trucks and some 7,000 police, gathered in the crossroads of the world to watch the glittering sphere complete its minute-long drop, marking the beginning of 2017. In Philadelphia, revelers donned brightly colored costumes for the annual New Year's Day Mama's Day Parade. It is one of the oldest and best-known parades in the U.S. Local organizations, which make up the majority of the parade's participants, compete for top honors in different categories: comics, fancies, string bands, and fancy brigades. The term Mama refers to an amateur actor wearing a costume to perform in a folk play.
Thank you.
Some 1,500 people began the new year with a refreshing dive into a chilly North Sea. Braving the freezing winter temperatures, the swimmers ran on Ostend Beach to dive into the 6 degrees Celsius water. But most of them quickly get out of the sea and went back to their towels and dry clothes to keep warm. Some participants made it a tradition to bathe in the North Sea at the beginning of each new year. The first New Year dive in Ostend was organized in 1987. In Italy, a group of people plunged off a bridge into the freezing waters of Rome's Tiber River. The annual Tiber dive has been celebrated on the first day of the new year since 1946. This year, 4 divers took part, some with more style than others, diving or jumping off the 70-meter high bridge in the center of the Italian capital. A veteran diver, 64-year-old known as Mr. OK, took his place for the final dive. And finally, very cold conditions in most regions for the rest of tonight. Frost formation is predicted after midnight in the hilly areas, Badia and eastern plains. Tomorrow, cold conditions will prevail across much of the kingdom, with a chance for light rain in the north. Winds will be westerly to northwesterly moderate, picking up at times. The Gulf Aqaba should expect fair conditions tomorrow with northerly moderate winds and calm seas. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, here are top stories once again. 2 Jordanian citizens are killed and 5 injured in the New Year terrorist attack in Istanbul. Jordan condemns the shooting in Istanbul that killed 39 people and expresses solidarity with Turkey in fighting terrorism. And 7 Iraqi policemen are killed in an attack claimed by Daesh terror group in the southern city of Najaf. And with that, we come to the end of tonight's news. From myself, Balqar, and everyone here at Jordan Television, we would like to wish you a happy and prosperous New Year. Good night.